The silence of the jungle is broken by a single, heavy splash. Ripples distort the reflection of the limestone walls on the surface of the dark green water, and then the stillness returns. In the 9th century, while the great dynasties of the south, like Tikal and Palenque, were crumbling into ruin and being reclaimed by the vines, one city in the arid north did not just survive. It transformed into a predator. Chichen Itza was not built on the vanity of a single king, but on a terrifying alliance of merchants, warriors, and priests who imported turquoise from the deserts of the far north and gold from the jungles of the south. Yet, in the depths of this sacred cenote, dredgers found not only precious jade, but the bones of men, women, and children, all sent into the abyss to beg the rain god for the one thing that gold could not buy. Welcome back to the Earthen Dawn. Today, we enter the mouth of the well of the Itza to uncover how this metropolis engineered the final, bloody resurgence of the Maya civilization. To understand the monster that Chichen Itza became, you must first stand in the dust of the northern lowlands. Unlike the humid, river-fed rainforests of the south, where Tikal and Palenque once thrived, the Yucatan Peninsula is a massive, flat shelf of limestone that swallows every drop of rain. There are no surface rivers here, no lakes to irrigate the fields, only an endless scrub forest baking under a relentless sun. By the 9th century, this difference became a death sentence for the South. The terminal classic collapse was unraveling the old world. Megadroughts turned the southern breadbaskets into dust bowls, sparking famine, warfare, and the abandonment of cities that had stood for 1,000 years.
The great city of Chichen Itza was largely abandoned.
Precisely when the Maya civilization was supposedly dying, the north began to rise. The secret lay beneath the stone. The limestone crust of the Yucatan is pockmarked with natural sinkholes called cenotes, which open directly into the cool, freshwater table flowing
Here,
underground.
the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan
Chichen
rises
Itza
above the
was
scrub
deliberately
forest,
positioned
sustained
between
by the
two
sacred
enormous
waters of the
cenotes.
Extoloc cenote.
The Extoloc, which provided water for the city's daily thirst, and the sacred cenote, which would feed a different kind of hunger. Into this vacuum stepped the Itza, a group described in later chronicles as foreigners, or those who speak our language brokenly. They were likely a cosmopolitan mix of Chontal Maya warriors and traders who knew that in a dying world, the one who controls the water controls the future. They built a sanctuary in the desolation, turning a geological quirk into the foundation of an empire. But survival in this unforgiving landscape required more than just engineering. It required a constant, terrifying dialogue with the forces of nature, a bargain that would soon demand a payment far heavier than mere prayer. To solidify their claim over this harsh land, the architects of Chichen Itza did not just build a city. They built a stone machine designed to capture time itself. Standing at the center of the great plaza is the Temple of Kukulkan, known today as El Castillo. To the uninitiated, it is a pyramid. To the astronomer priest, it is a physical manifestation of the calendar. The design is mathematically perfect. 4 staircases, each with 91 steps. When you add the single platform at the top, the total is 365. 1 step for every day of the solar year. This was not merely symbolic. In a society where agriculture was life and drought was death, the ability to predict the seasons with absolute precision was indistinguishable from magic. The true genius of this engineering reveals itself only twice a year, during the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the late afternoon sun strikes the northwest corner of the pyramid, it casts a series of triangular shadows against the balustrade. Slowly, relentlessly, these triangles link together to form the undulating body of a massive serpent, slithering down the stone to join the carved snakehead at the base. For the thousands gathering in the plaza below, this was a terrifying confirmation. Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, had descended from the heavens to walk among them. But their gaze was not fixed only on the sun. To the south lies El Caracal, a crumbling, snail-shaped tower that served as an observatory. Here, through narrow windows aligned to specific celestial coordinates,
to track your journey
priests
across the heavens,
tracked the
great
movements
sky
of
fathers.
Venus with obsessive accuracy. But
The Maya
for the
believed
Maya,
that the cycles
Venus was not the planet of
for
love.
conquest.
It was the great star, the harbinger of war. Its rising signaled the precise moment to launch raids and capture prisoners. This city was calibrated to the cosmos, turning the sky into a timetable for violence. Yet, as scholars studied these buildings, they noticed something unsettling. The steep talud tablero profiles and the feathered serpent imagery were not purely Maya. They whispered of a distant, warlike influence arriving from the Pace, west. A connection that suggests Chichen Itza was not just a religious center, but the outpost of a new, foreign order. As you walk through the Temple of the Warriors, the ghostly silence of the jungle is replaced by the rigid discipline of stone columns. Hundreds of them, marching in perfect formation. This is where the story of Chichen Itza takes a sharp, jagged turn away from the Maya tradition. These colonnades do not resemble the intricate, organic palaces of Palenque. They are almost identical copies of the architecture found in Tula, the capital of the Toltec Empire, located over 1,000 kilometers away in the central Mexican highlands. At the entrance of the temples sits the Chacmul,
The stone.
a reclining stone figure with its head turned 90 degrees and a bowl resting on its stomach, waiting to receive human hearts. This figure is not Maya. It is a stranger, an import from the distant west. History records the legend of Seacatl Tupiltzin Quetzalcoatl, the priest king of Tula, who was exiled by his enemies and fled to the east, across the sea, promising to return. Coincidentally, Maya chronicles speak of the arrival of a conqueror named Kukulkan, the direct Maya translation of feathered serpent, who reorganized the city and established a new order. For decades, archaeologists argued over whether this was a military invasion or an elite alliance, but the result was the same: the imposition of a terrifying militarism. The art shifts from glorifying the divine lineage of a single king to celebrating anonymous battalions of warriors, the orders of the eagle and the jaguar. In the bas-reliefs, these soldiers are not depicted in acts of courtly ritual, but in the raw business of conquest, clutching spear throwers and obsidian-edged swords. This was no longer a city ruled by the whims of a god king. but a state organized for perpetual war. And this new machinery of death needed an arena, a stage grand enough to match its terrible ambition. To the west of the Great Pyramid lies a walled enclosure so vast it feels less like a sports arena and more like a canyon carved by human hands. This is the Great Ball Court, and at 166 meters long, longer than an American football field, it dwarfs every other court ever built in Mesoamerica. The walls rise vertically, sheer cliffs of stone, designed to keep the heavy rubber ball in play, but also to trap sound. The acoustic engineering here is as unnerving as it is brilliant. A whisper uttered at one end of the court can be heard clearly at the other, 150 meters away. It was a theater designed so that not a single gasp of effort or cry of pain would be lost to the wind. Imagine standing here 1,000 years ago. The air is thick with the smell of copal incense and the sharp tang of sweat. Two teams face off, not in a game of leisure, but in a ritual reenactment of the cosmic battle between day and night, life and death. The bowl, a solid mass of rubber weighing up to 4 kilograms, slams against the stone walls with the sound of a cracking whip. Players bruise their hips and chests, driving the ball toward the stone ring set high on the walls. An impossibly difficult target. But the true stakes of this contest are etched into the very walls that surround them. Along the lower benches of the court, elaborate bas-reliefs tell the grim conclusion of the match. One panel depicts a kneeling player, not in triumph,
Chichen
but in
Itza
submission.
thrived on the sacred exchange.
He has been decapitated. From his severed neck, 7 streams of blood burst forth. But they do not fall as liquid. They transform into writhing serpents and flowering vines. To the Maya, this was the ultimate paradox. Death was the fertilizer for life. The sacrifice was necessary to keep the sun moving and the corn growing. Just outside the court stands
The Temple of the Skull
Tzompantli,
stands as a
the
permanent
Wall of
reminder of
Skulls,
Chichen.
a low platform carved with row after row of hollow-eyed
Hidden
human
deep
skulls,
within the Yucatan jungle,
a permanent
the ancient city of Chichen
stone
Itza.
scoreboard of those who paid the ultimate price. Yet, for all the public spectacle of the ballgame, the blood spilled here was a mere drop compared to the industrial-scale offerings demanded by the city's true heart, hidden deep within the jungle to the north. A raised white causeway, known as a sakbi, cuts through the dense scrub forest north of the Great Plaza, leading 300 meters away from the city center to the brink of a natural abyss. This is the sacred cenote, a geological scar in the earth 60 meters in diameter, with sheer limestone walls dropping nearly 30 meters to the surface of the water below. For centuries, this sinkhole was the destination of pilgrims from across Mesoamerica who approached the edge not to draw water, but to feed the darkness. The water here is a murky, opaque green, hiding a bottomless layer of silt that, when dredged by archaeologists, revealed the desperate economic reach of the Maya elite. They pulled up gold discs embossed with scenes of warfare from Panama, copper bells from the central Mexican highlands, and turquoise traveled all the way from the American Southwest. This was a global graveyard of wealth thrown into the deep to appease Chak, the rain god, when the skies turned to dust. But the gods demanded more than jade and gold. Entangled with the precious jewelry were the bleached remnants of the ultimate payment: human bones. Modern forensic analysis of these remains has shattered the Victorian myth that only young virgins were sacrificed here. The bones tell a story of total mobilization in the face of catastrophe. They belong to fierce warriors, elderly women, and young children. Many show signs of healed fractures or nutritional stress, suggesting they were not pampered royals but captives, or the vulnerable, purchased or taken to be messengers to the underworld. They were likely painted blue, the color of the rain, and cast into the void in a final, frantic bid to stop the droughts that were slowly strangling the civilization. They gave the gods their wealth, their enemies, and their children, but eventually, even the water could not save them from the political rot that was beginning to fracture the city from within. While the priests were busy feeding the gods, a new breed of power player was busy feeding the city's ambition: the merchant warrior. Unlike the isolated city-states of the South, which relied on the prestige of their lineage, Chichen Itza was a commercial empire that functioned with the ruthless efficiency of a modern corporation. Its power did not come solely from the temple, but from the sea. 90 kilometers to the north, at the port of Isla Cerritos, archaeologists have uncovered the logistical heart of this network, a massive transshipment hub that controlled the flow of goods around the entire Yucatan Peninsula. The lifeblood of this economy was not gold, but salt. By seizing control of the massive salt beds along the northern coast, Chichen Itza monopolized a biological necessity for every human living in the tropical forest. They traded this white gold for obsidian from the Mexican highlands and jade from the Motagua Valley, creating a web of commerce that extended from what is now the American Southwest to Panama. To defend these routes, the city developed a specialized military class, armed not just with spears, but with the finest imported obsidian blades, sharper than surgical steel. The sound of Chichen Itza was not just the chanting of prayers, but the rhythmic thud of hundreds of heavy, dug-out canoes arriving at the docks, laden with tribute and profit. This economic shift fundamentally altered the political structure of the city. In the south, power had been concentrated in the hands of a single Kuhol Ajar, or Holy Lord. When he fell, the city fell.
Fresh fish and fruit here.
But Chichen Itza was governed by a system known as Multipal, ruled by council. It was an oligarchy of powerful lineages, likely the heads of the merchant families and warrior orders, sitting together on a stone throne of the jaguar that was wide enough for 2 or more lords. This decentralized structure made the state incredibly resilient. You could not kill the city by killing one man. However, a system built on a council of powerful, armed families is only stable as long as everyone agrees on who gets the biggest share of the profit. And as the wealth piled higher, the fragile truce between the great houses began to fracture. Chichen Itza was designed to withstand the wrath of the heavens, but it was not built to survive the treachery of men. By the 13th century, the delicate balance of the Multipal Council began to rot from within. The collapse did not come from a foreign invader, but from a neighbor. The rising city of Mayapan, led by the ambitious Kokam lineage.
He claims
History
to speak for
records
the Jaguar,
the
but
legend
I fear his
of Hunak
ambition more
Seal,
than the drought.
a ruler who supposedly threw himself into the sacred cenote as a sacrifice, survived the ordeal, and emerged claiming that the rain gods had anointed him the supreme king. Whether this was a miracle or a calculated political stunt, the result was the shattering of the coalition. Archaeology confirms the violence of this divorce. In the elite administrative centers of Chichen Itza, we find the scars of a targeted purge.
By the 13th century,
The roofs of the great council halls were
The
torched.
halls of power were
The
violently
heat was
purged.
so
Their
intense,
stone
it
symbols
calcified the limestone walls. Columns were toppled, and the stone thrones of the lords were smashed. A deliberate desecration intended to erase the authority of the city's rulers. The population did not vanish into thin air. They were absorbed into the new order of Mayapan or dispersed back into the forest villages. The great plazas, once deafening with the sounds of commerce and ritual, fell silent. The jungle began its slow, grinding work of reclamation, swallowing the stone jaguars and the ball courts. But while the people fled, the reputation of the city remained. The legends of the sorcerers of water would linger in the shadows, waiting to terrify a new set of invaders who would arrive from across the ocean 3 centuries later. Chichen Itza was abandoned by its kings, but it was never truly forgotten by its people. When the Spanish conquistador Francisco de Montejo the Younger marched into the northern Yucatan in the 16th century, he found the great stone city waiting for him, overgrown, but still imposing enough to be chosen as the potential capital of his new colony. He set up his camp among the ruins of the old Chichen, attempting to draft the local population into servitude. But the Maya of the north were not easily broken. After months of siege and guerrilla warfare, the Spanish were forced to flee, driven out by a people who still regarded these crumbling temples as the seat of their ancestors' power. The city was reclaimed by the forest, its location becoming a secret shared only by local villagers and the encroaching roots of the ceiba trees for nearly 300 years. It was not until the 19th century, when explorers like John Lloyd Stevens and Frederick Catherwood hacked their way through the vines with machetes, that the Western world once again gazed upon the city of the sorcerers of water. Their detailed illustrations revealed a civilization that rivaled ancient
Chichen
Egypt
Itza,
in scale
the
and
city of the
sophistication,
water sorcerers.
shattering the European assumption that the Americas had no history before Columbus.
Absolutely massive in person.
Today,
How did
Chichen
they build this
Itza
without modern
stands
tools?
as one of the new 7 wonders of the world, visited by millions who come to stare up at the gray limestone against the blue sky. Yet the true legacy of the city is not in the tickets sold, but in the shadow that still falls twice a year. Every equinox,
As the
regardless
final
of the
shadow
empires
connects,
that have risen and
Kukulkan
fallen around
descends.
it, the serpent shadow of Kukulkan still descends the pyramid steps with mathematical precision. The kings are gone, the sacrifices have stopped, but the machine they built continues to work. A silent, terrifying reminder that while civilizations may perish, time itself is the only true conqueror. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark heart of the Maya world. If you want to relive more heroic and tragic chapters of history with us, please subscribe to the Earthen Dawn.